In the previous video, we completed building the spoiler for the back of the car. In this video, we're going to go ahead and start to build the rear bumper and the exhaust pipe that goes in the back. Okay, so here's the rear bumper from the original Digital Tutors photorealistic car modeling kit. And you may recall, if you've purchased that kit, at the end of that, we actually converted this bumper to a polygon surface for the final render. But for this particular step that we're going to be doing, I've loaded up the subdivision version of this rear bumper, and it's important that you have the subdivision version loaded up for these next few steps that we're going to be doing. Okay, so before I start to actually build the recess for the tailpipe, let's go ahead and start to extend this rear bumper down so that it matches up a little more closely with the image planes. So what I'm going to do is right-click on that subdivision surface and select these vertices, pretty much these first 4 rows. Okay, just start to pull these down. And once I've pulled those down, I'm going to go ahead and just deselect this top row and continue pulling these down. And you might need to pull a few of these vertices back. Okay. So now we have the bumper extended a little further down. Okay, so for this next step, again, we're going to want to make sure that this is a subdivision surface. Right-click on that subdivision surface and go to Polygon Selection. Okay, and it's going to take just a second to actually make the conversion to a polygon cage. Okay, once it's updated, go to Face Selection. And what we're going to do is select these, I guess it's 3 faces. And these are going to actually become the recess for the tailpipe. So with these faces selected, I'm going to hit Delete. And again, the system's going to be moving at a fairly slow pace because this is a somewhat complex piece of geometry, and it's going to take just a few minutes to evaluate what this surface is going to look like. Okay, so we'll give this just a few seconds to think. Okay, so here's the hole that it made for us. Now before we go ahead and move on to this next step, I'm just going to select some of these vertices and start to pull these over and make a little bit bigger opening for this tailpipe, because this is going to be a pretty good sized tailpipe that we're going to put up in here. And as you're pulling any of these vertices, you notice that you start to see these tears in the geometry. That's okay. Those aren't going to actually show up in your render, so just go ahead and ignore those. Okay, so once we've got the hole pretty much to the size that we want it, let's go ahead and go to Edge Selection, and let's select these polygon edges that run around the perimeter of this hole that we just created. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just select these edges, and I want to go ahead and make sure under Polygons, under the tool options, that this Keep Faces Together is turned on. And now under Edit Polygons, let's go to Extrude Edge. And before I extrude this edge, I'm going to go ahead and just pause the video for a few minutes, because this is going to take a minute to extrude the edge. Because like I said earlier, this is a fairly complex piece of geometry, and it's going to take a minute or two to evaluate. So rather than just have you sit here and watch me stare at my screen for the next minute and a half, I'm going to go ahead and just pause the recording for just a second while I run this extrude edge command. Okay, so here's the extrude command, and that took about a minute for it to evaluate this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and with this extrude that I just made, I'm going to click on this little switch here, which will jump it from either a local axis mode or a global axis mode. Okay, and I want to switch it to global, and so that way I know when I pull these, I'm going to pull them straight back. And what I want to do is just pull this extrude that we made, pull it back just a little bit to start to make a sort of rounded shape. Okay, and you can see that my system is still behaving pretty slowly because, like I said earlier, it is a fairly complex piece of geometry. Okay, so with all of these edges still selected, I'm going to extrude one more time. And again, I'm going to go ahead and pause this system. I'm going to go ahead and pause my recording for just a second while I run another extrude edge command. Okay, so here's the other extrude edge, and this one actually happened fairly quickly. So with this other extrude that we just made, let's go ahead and continue pulling this back. Or actually, it looks like I may have accidentally grabbed the scale manipulator instead of the move manipulator. So let me go ahead and undo that. Make sure I grab the move manipulator. And let's just pull this straight back. Okay, and you can see how slowly my system's actually moving. It's definitely thinking pretty hard. Okay, so I'm just going to take this and really just pull this straight back, and that'll just make, like I said, a nice little recess in here for our tailpipe to fit inside of. Okay, so now I can go back to a standard mode, go out of this polygon mode and go back to a standard subdivision mode. And like I said, give it just a second to evaluate this surface. And here in just a second, it should jump us back to subdivision mode. There we go. And now what we have is a nice recess that actually has a bit of a depth to it. And in the next video, we'll go ahead and actually build this tailpipe that'll fit up inside this recess.